In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome, welcome to America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles Zachary King, and as always, I am grateful, genuinely, deeply, profoundly grateful that you chose to spend this time with us. Whether you're watching from your living room, listening in your car, or catching us on your phone during a quiet moment at the end of a long day, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This is a space built for you. But first, let me tell you who we are for anyone who may be joining us for the very first time. America in Black and White is not just a show. It is a mission, it is a commitment, a covenant, really, to have the honest, uncomfortable, necessary, and ultimately uplifting conversations about what it means to be Black in America. Not the sanitized version, not the version that makes everyone comfortable, the real version, the version that acknowledges pain while refusing to be consumed by it, the version that tells the truth about where we have been so we can be intentional about where we are going. We are solution focused, we are community driven, we are faith anchored, and we are unapologetically Black in all the beauty, complexity, and power that carries. Now, let me tell you about our guest tonight. His name is West Ferguson. And when I tell you that this man's life is a testament to what happens when a boy raised with values, shaped by history, and anchored in faith decides to show up fully in every room he walks into. I mean that with everything in me. Wes Ferguson is a DEI executive, a community steward, a mentor, a servant leader. He is a man who took the lessons of his mother's kitchen table, those conversations about Black history, about dignity, about giving back, and carried them into boardrooms, nonprofit boards, and the hearts of young people who needed someone to believe in them. His journey from humble beginnings to one of the most respected voices in diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a fairy tale. It is evidence that our stories matter, evidence that the investment our mothers and grandmothers made in us is never wasted, evidence that you can hold space for both corporate excellence and community love, and that those two things are not opposites. They're always meant to work together. So tonight, we're going to go deep. We're going to talk about where Wes came from. We're going to talk about what the mentors who shaped him, the history that fueled him, and the faith that sustains him. We're going to ask the hard questions, and he is going to give us real answers. Buckle up, American Black and White family. The conversation that you have been waiting for starts right now. Let's go and let's welcome Wes Ferguson to the show. Hello,
Thank
sir.
you. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. So is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
That was a wonderful introduction by Charles. I am honored to have been reached out by Charles to be featured on this channel, featured on this podcast, live, to answer questions and really have this discussion that is America in black and white and really does lend its voice. So I'm super excited to be a part of this mission. Thank you for having me yet again.
Yes, sir. So as we jump into the show, well, I'm going to start with what we call your roots in your early life, so people can get to know a little bit more about West before West became who he is today. So take us all the way back to the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what was the energy of that household and that neighborhood? What was that like when you were a child?
Wow, we're going all the way back. Well, I was adopted, so I think that I'd like to start by saying that, and I'm blessed that I was adopted. When I think about all the different ways I could have been raised, I could have had different paths if I was not adopted, if I was in the system still, the foster care system, or if I wasn't adopted by the family that adopted me. So I was adopted pretty young, and I was raised by my father, who's the youngest of 6 kids, and I was raised by my mother, who's the oldest of 6 kids. So it's always been an interesting collaboration of the parenting styles growing up. But we lived right down the street from my grandmother. My parents really scraped and saved to be able to take us to a good school system where in the beginning we were the minority. We were one of the few Black families that were there. But in doing that, they wanted to provide us with something different than maybe what our cousins grew up with, or and it was their sacrifice. They understood that education was the foundation for a better life. Yeah.
So your mother is clearly a foundational figure in your story. How would you describe her, and what is the first memory you have of the understanding just how powerful her influence on your reality or on you really was?
You know, my mother is and this might be something that is known or that is felt within other people within the Black community, but on both my father and my mother's side, the women were the breadwinners. So even though the men were hardworking on my father's side, maybe less so on my mom's side, because it was mostly women on my mom's side. My mother really, like, getting her doctorate degree, but she started out with her associates, and she didn't really finish until she was probably in her late 20s. She didn't get her bachelor's till her early 30s, and then she moved up and got her master's and then her PhD, went back for her baccalaureate, and she's now currently going for her JD right now. So she is a force to be reckoned with, and I think I realized that when I started to realize what all of the women in our family, what they were doing with their lives, how they were supporting their families in the best way that they could. Not always perfectly, not always seamlessly, but they were supporting their families. And my mother was able to, in times of struggle, like during 2008, that's when I kind of saw that, it's her job. It's her education that is bringing us to safety financially as a family, to security as a family. So I think that was a defining moment. I think the 2008 crisis, and I think for a lot of us, 2008, 2010, that was really my understanding of knowing that my mother and her education and her force is something not to be reckoned with.
Well, look, before I ask this next question, let me just say hello to all of our audience and everyone that's out there listening, everybody that's participating and with this live right now. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the show. And please put your questions and comments in the chat so we can get this great message that West is about to leave for us. So West, your mother instilled in you love of Black history from a very early age. What does that look like? Is it books on the shelf, dinner table conversations, intentional lessons, Walk us through what that world felt like as a child.
I feel like for me, it's music and church. So, music and faith. My mother grew up Jehovah's Witness, and she later moved over to my father's religion. He's Baptist. And we grew up in a church that was a small church where my father's family was the founding family. So highly respected, but also was a very tiny church. There's a lot of love, a lot of care and attention, a lot of family aspect, community aspect to that. And it's just such a blessing to be raised in a church like that. That said, we were also raised around a lot of music. So Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, uh, Jackson Five. I mean, anything Jackson family oriented. But I mean, a lot of other Black artists. And I grew up with movement, right? We danced around the home while we were always cleaning and cooking. And I feel like Black music and Black the Black church, right? This idea of what it means to be Christian and Black was definitely a big part of my upbringing. Then it was also supported by my grandmother as well, because we lived down the street from her. So that was a big thing. So I feel like my understanding of what it means to be Black comes through the church and it comes through music. Yeah.
So, growing up in a working class household can shape a person's in profound ways. What did your upbringing teach you about hard work, dignity, and community that you simply could not have learned anywhere else?
Wow. I come from my grandmother is actually the youngest child of grandparents. So my great grandparents' parents were slaves. So my grandmother came up here when she was, she was younger, but she moved from Savannah. It was a big trip to make with her family to Cleveland to get a job. Her husband, my late grandfather, he was at Ford, and that was the foundation piece, right? So we grew up understanding that hard work is key, and that also that no job is a small job. So we were raised on hard work. We were raised on, good home training, so to speak, right? Our grandmother was in our lives, all the time. So when I think about, what does it mean growing up in humble beginnings? It's that no job is small and every job is precious, right? Any job that's on your resume is helping you to advance further. Going to work on time, making sure that you show up, making sure you ask for extra work, making sure that you are an asset, not a liability, that you are innovative. These are things I grew up with, not from just my grandmother, or understanding what it means to have a job and how a job supports a generation, right? Because Ford really did support a generation of my family moving and migrating from the South to Cleveland. But also, even my mother's side, education was the forefront. My grandfather, my late grandfather, on my mom's side, he was actually a chemist. He actually also, and this is something that's maybe a little more private, but he has a musical past as well, and he has records and some royalties that came from some of those records of being a part of a great band. And it's something that so it wasn't just education, it was also, once again, music that helps to drive us as a family. And I think I've learned a lot about just being a hardworking person, no matter what your role is, and giving it your all, not knowing what's around the corner, right? You do a good job at your one role, you might be offered something else, there might be a promotion on the table, but these were things I learned as a very small child.
So when you think about those things from, younger West, that what you were taught, and now you're older West, can you tell us what are the most unforgettable lessons and things that you have learned that you carry with you today?
I think about my grandmother and her gardening. So being able to know how to raise and tend to plants, but plants that are near and dear to her upbringing. So collard greens, um, green beans, things that created the backbone of what we ate when we were celebrating holidays. So, uh, being able to rinse and handle, pig intestines, chitlins, and prepare those, things like that. So I feel like food, but also being able to, I mean, if I wanted to, I could tomorrow. I used to have a garden. I could have a garden tomorrow, and I know how to take care of it based on my grandmother, based on watching her take care of her large garden that she had in the backyard. I mean, this garden was massive for little old me. So I felt like being able to take ownership of your nutrition, your health, your traditions. My grandmother had a hand in teaching me that. I feel like that's probably the cornerstone.
So as you think about that, though, and the work that you do, that is, from the boardrooms and the nonprofits that you work with and so forth. Do you ever think of those lessons that you were taught younger on now, and you carry that into your everyday work?
I really think that I do now that I'm saying it out loud. I don't think about it all the time, but that ownership, right? I mean, it's a big word, but when you break it down, for me, it goes back down to how I was raised. And that, I had to, when I wanted my own garden, my parents let me have it, but I had to own it. So I had to till the land. It was tiny. It was a quarter, if not less than the quarter of the size of my grandmother's. But I took care of it, and I had to make sure that the rabbits stayed out, and I had to do things. So being comfortable from a very young age on owning a project, owning my body of work, right? Whether it be a garden or a project with a nonprofit, I own it and I carry that through the same way that my grandmother made sure that there are enough green beans and enough collard greens to make a meal for a celebration. Yeah.
So, uh, were there moments in your childhood where you became acutely aware of race, of what it meant to be a black boy in America? What was the awakening like, and who helped you process that?
I'll be honest. Okay, this is actually, so you want to talk about ripping the band-aid off of what it means to be black, and not like, let's not be squeamish about everything. I realized that there's a multitude of ways to be black in America, right? But I learned the two biggest ones is where you live, right? What side of the tracks do you live on? As
Mm.
as we started to grow up, we realized, and I think me and my siblings all realized that we weren't, our parents made sacrifices to get us into certain school systems so that we could have a certain amount of, I guess you could say privilege, but a great foundation so that we had a great education, right? High school education to start out with. And that wasn't the case for both sides of my family. So we were in between two sides of the family. One side was more educated and more financially maybe responsible. The other side maybe wasn't as such. And I guess I'm going really deep into my own family history here, but it was interesting being in the middle, right? We have cousins that have baby fat and all of the name brands. And, we felt like we were left out by not having those things, even though maybe we lived in a different zip code. But there were other things going on that we didn't understand about how they were maintaining their homes and maintaining their pocketbooks, right? But then we had the other side of the family that, in this other side of the family, they were real, right? They were the ones that we had the most fun with, that we laughed and did all the things with. It's just something different. Then the other side of the family might have had more education, but things were very silent. We couldn't talk about certain things. We didn't observe certain things that happened there. We couldn't really be real. There was a certain amount of like, you know, uh, you know, you have to keep your keep your pearls clutched, and I don't know, keep your collar buttoned up tight. So there were two. Our family existed in between two different realities always, and we kind of, I think, me and my siblings, I'll speak for them as the oldest child a little bit here. We learned how to code switch very quickly. What, when to use certain lingo, when to not, maybe when we were younger, trying to make sure that we fit in with both sides of the family, so to speak. It's not that anyone told us we had to, but I think we learned that, oh, wow, it's not just that we're in a predominantly white area, but also there's two different ways to be Black as well. And this is just one of those things we have to kind of get used to, is the fact that we were raised differently and we have two different sides of the family that might need two different ways of, or two different versions of who we are, kind of. Yeah.
So was that like a coping mechanism?
I guess you could say we use it to cope. I think we had fun on either side. It's just the fun looked different. The conversations looked different, right? The trauma on either side of the family looked different. And I can't believe, so here I am, as I'm now 34, and I'm still wondering, what can I say? But this is all my story now. This is all my history now.
Right.
I carry this into how I want to raise a child, or how I keep a job or don't keep a job, how I handle my finances or how I don't handle my finances, right? This is now my history. So I do get to speak on it with respect to those that I've interacted with, those that I was raised with. So I'm owning that right now. So thank you for the platform to do that, Charles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely. So what was community like where you grew up? Was there a strong sense of collective identity and mutual support, or was your family more of an island? How did that shape your own community values?
Asking some interesting questions, Charles. So I think the reason why, I think my parents did the best that they could. I think that my parents, both sides of the family, achieved so much. My mother's side of the family were on the Upper East Side. They were not, my parents, as far as I remember, my mom grew up with, she had a nice lifestyle. My father also had a nice lifestyle. They grew up in Cleveland. And they grew up in a beautiful home where it wasn't large, but it was paid for. It was handled because of the hard work that my late grandfather did to work at Ford and maintain his job at Ford, right? And get a retirement pension plan at Ford. So I think I learned very quickly that, there's always a consequence to every decision. There's a trade-off. There's never a perfect, oh my gosh, this is going to create the perfect life for us, right? Yeah, I mean, my parents, my parents got us into a great school system, but in doing so, but not even just that, the fact that all of the different traumas of what it means to be Black and have to not have conversations around what it means to be Black in your communities, because they might be predominantly white, or maybe you are trying to save face. Maybe sometimes when you are tapping on the door of trauma or on difficult conversations that want to be had, that need to be had, but cannot be had because you don't have the language for them, you don't have the support system for them, they just never happen. Things fester. And I think what happened, and I can say this on average, is that in my family on both sides, it was very clear to me, and it's more clear to me now, mental health and being open to being emotionally available, right? Those are just not the average experience that we grew up with. And I talk for me and my siblings yet again, just because I'm thinking about where we grew up as a household. We were loved, we were cared for, we had food in our bellies.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My internet just gave out here. One moment. You guys see me now? I'm sorry.
Yes, well, I could see it. I can still see you.
Okay, good. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is that we grew up in a home in a lifestyle where to be Black was understood, but there were so many different layers that I think had been lived and experienced by the time that we were born that were not always talked about or accessible because you didn't talk about certain things. And because you didn't talk about it, it was a weight. It was a weight, and that weight was experienced as silence, honestly, in a lot of the households that we were in, the communities that we were in. Things went unsaid, things went undone because there weren't spaces in the communities that we grew up in to talk about trauma, to talk about emotional neglect, to talk about things of that nature. So we grew up we grew up from parents that our grandparents are part of this silent generation. You didn't talk about certain things. And because we didn't talk about certain things, the weight of those things were passed on to me, my siblings, my cousins. And it was up to us to carry those things, to process those things, sometimes, a lot of the time, by ourselves. So, yeah, that's the community that I grew up in. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's just the truth
Right.
that a lot of things couldn't be discussed and a lot of things still are not discussed.
But that's one of the things that that's like an understood thing in our culture is that what's in my house stay in my house. You don't
It's
talk
very
about
true.
it. So
It's so true. I'm breaking a lot of rules right now, I guess.
that's
Um,
an understood thing, and that's one of the things I think that's so deep and so deep about the
ingrained.
culture. But it
Yeah.
makes you the person that you are because it's clearly one of those things that gave you the resilience and the structure and the strength that you have right now today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it made me very curious because I saw the things that were happening. I noticed the patterns. I think any of us can see the patterns, right? We've talked about what does it mean to be Black in America, and how it looks different in other parts of the world if we're Black in Africa versus being Black in Germany, right? Or in other places that don't have the type of policing that we have, right? So those systems here um, have affected us. It's up to us on how the effect of what those systems had on us. Does it create resilience or does it create a storm, a vacuum where there's more discord and chaos? Do we perpetuate the trauma that we also experience? And it's not an easy question to answer. It's not an easy topic, and it's person to person. We all have our own stories. We all have our own ways to process and deal and understand those things.
So let's talk about your faith. When did you first develop a spiritual foundation, and was that cultivated at home, at church, or did it come to you in your own time?
All of it. So yes, yes, all of that. I think it's transformed, it's morphed. I think that wow. I guess I can go a little bit deeper here. I mean, so I think we all have childhood trauma. We all have life trauma that's happened to us. And I've experienced my own bit of childhood trauma. And it was after that time that I really struggled, especially as I became a young man and was 16 to 18, 16 to 20, really figuring out, well, what is my faith if some of the things that traumatized me were actually even capable of happening underneath God's watch? So I did struggle with my faith in my earliest 20s. I did find, I think, resilience, or I did find continuity, stability with my faith in God through understanding that life, just like I said, right, there are trade-offs. There's always consequences to our choices, to other people's choices that affect us because of the free will that we have as these human beings on earth, right? How God created us with free will that goes in positive directions, also goes in negative directions. So I feel like I've run the gamut of what does it mean to be a child of God, because I've had to come to terms with, okay, even as a young child, so bad things can happen to good people. Bad things can happen to people that didn't expect anything bad to happen and that we thought we were doing the right thing the entire time. So understanding that there's a greater purpose, not in our pain, but there's a greater purpose that we have on earth where we do exist with other people with free will, and that we ourselves also have to act intentionally with our own free will, but that we can't just say that nothing exists or that we're upset with God because of this free will. We have to come to terms with that. And I think that's what allowed me to realize that, okay, I do still believe in God. I still do believe in higher power. Yeah.
So,
Well, and I can go a step further. I should have said this too. It's very interesting growing up with, the baptism, and then my mother, who was Jehovah's Witness and then moved over to this Baptist faith. So very, very interesting, because her journey and her faith is totally different because of her upbringing and because of, once she married, what she married into. And I think that affected us as well, positively, for us to be critical thinkers through God's word, right? I can't recite the Bible back and forth like she can, because she went to Catholic school and she was Jehovah's Witness, and there's just things that were nailed into her, drilled into her. But I have an appreciation for what it means to be a child of God.
so as a young person, who were the figures in real life or in culture that you looked up to and thought, I want to be something like that? What did greatness look like to you at the age of 10 or 12?
Well, I'm going to be honest. This is going to be twofold, just because I had the platform and I feel like maybe not everyone, we talk a lot about, kids that dreamed about what they wanted to be when they grew up, and a lot of us didn't know, right? I didn't honestly think that I was going to make it to be this age. I didn't think I was going to live this long. And I think a lot of that was from my childhood trauma and not seeing a future through the pain. So I feel like I didn't start dreaming and really hoping for something, truly latching on to, oh wow, like what might life look like at 80 years old if I make the decisions that I'm making today. I feel like that probably didn't happen until my mid to late 20s. So in the past decade, have I been thinking about, oh wow, like what does it mean to grow up and how do I want to actually grow up? So that said, who do I look up to? I would say I look up to my mother. I look up to all the Black women that I've been raised by, whether it was in the church or whether it was at home, because I saw how much they were carrying, and it really fascinated me how much they were carrying. Now, that's not to say that my father didn't carry as much, but I was just very interested with this trend of, the fact that I have an aunt that was a senior vice president of a bank, and my mom, who has her doctorate degree and then got her baccalaureate degree, the women that were nurses and putting food on the table with their income, right? And even some of the women that aren't Black in my life, who were single mothers and had to raise their kids on small businesses and establish themselves. I think it's fascinating. I think it's amazing. And I look up to them as well as the Black men in my life too. But, I look up a lot to the Black women because of what they've had to, experience through time, through history, right? I think we've always, and this is me saying this cut and dry, there's so many layers to it. I think we've always had room for the Black man in our hearts to empathize, because they were and this is just me, this is layman's terms, I'm not a historian, but we've always, when I say we, the Black community has always said the Black men were holding them back. We need to pour into them. What are we doing for Black men, for Black boys, but also Black women who were thought of as less than, Black men at one time when they couldn't vote and they weren't the leaders of the household at one point. How it seems like they have definitely caught up. And I know that the lens is coming back onto men and boys in general right now. And I think it probably does need to balance back out again. So yes, I think it's amazing, and I look up to my mother predominantly.
So let's transition over to your education and career journey. Tell us about your educational journey. Where did you go? What did you study? And what drove your academic choices at the time when so many young Black men are navigating competing pressures around education and identity?
Well, this is great. I'm not sure if you had looked this up before I became your podcast guest, but I'm a part of that questioning group of, young men, I guess, so to speak. When I was going through high school, I graduated with honors, but coming back to childhood trauma when I was younger, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew what the world expected of me. I knew what my community expected of me. And I was very much a people pleaser back then. And I went down a path in my education for someone else, for my family, right? They were all calling me Dr. West very early on because I was going to be a veterinarian. I was going to go to veterinarian school. And it was a lot of pressure, but I was also dealing with mental health during that time as well. And there were some things that came up. I was diagnosed with OCD, and those things kind of took precedent. And when I talk about this experience of, okay, what happens in my house is what happens in my house, that's fine. But if you need professional help, if that's your mentality, then we don't know how to get the help when it's needed, when we're in crisis. And we didn't know how to get me the help. I didn't know how to get the help either. So I've honestly spent most of my 20s getting back to mental health, right? Understanding what my power is, not being a people pleaser, being able to be more assertive in how I see myself, building a better self-image, better self-esteem. And, I've gotten to the point now where we talk a lot about kids in college, and, I'm in a place now where I could choose my major and feel great about what I'm choosing, instead of wondering if I'm choosing it based on what I think I should be doing based on what family has taught me. So I have some college experience, but most of my experience is from life. Most of my experience, and the reason why I've gotten into management positions, or why I've gotten into luxury retail and was able to sell to, high net worth individuals, is because of my perseverance, and because of, just like I said, right, I was raised that hard work is necessary. Every job means something, and be able to grow incrementally through that. But I do value education. All of my siblings, I'm the oldest of four, all of my siblings have at least one degree, and my sister is she's moving towards what she wants to do. I'm not going to put pressure on her by saying it out loud, but whatever she wants to do with her many degrees, she's doing. And she's still going back for more. So I think it's amazing. And I'll be honest too, I come from both sides. My father did not finish college, but he actually had a successful business selling something to the government. I think I feel like it's something that came to pass before we were old enough to really ask him what that experience was like. And I think he, as a young father, was so deep into just raising four kids. We never really talked about his experience owning a successful business. He was able to sell and actually purchase the home where we grew up. And what got us into that great school system was because of him, right? And then everything else my mother built on from her experience and from her education. So they really were a pair. But my father, never really, as far as I know, never really finished college. And then my mother was very educated.
So tell us more about this people pleasing that you were mentioning earlier in this dialogue. How did you know that you were a people pleaser, and how did that impact the decisions that you were making at that time?
Well, how did I know? Well, I think I knew because of how my relationships were running when I was younger, right? I didn't really feel appreciated. I didn't really feel seen. And I felt like at the end of a lot of interactions with people in general, my cup was empty. My cup was bone dry all the time. I didn't know how to ask for something. I didn't think I was worth anything to ask for something in return, for friendship, for companionship. So I think it was my cup being extremely empty all the time that made me start wondering, okay, what do I need to do? Do I need to stop? So I need to start saying no? Do I need to start, I need to build up a sense of self-worth, a sense of self-esteem so that I'm not looking to other people to create that sense of self-worth. But it really did happen through, once again, right, that period of especially like 18 to the early 20s where I was perpetually I didn't feel like I had me time. I didn't feel like I understood why I was in these friendships all the time. And I thought a lot of it felt like it was because they needed me and I needed to be useful. I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? I needed to feel useful in my relationships instead of just being able to just be myself, And I think that sense of usefulness was also manifested itself as people pleasing. And I think I've only solved that by asking more of people in my friendships to let me be authentic, but also to build up my own self esteem as well. Having better boundaries, being able to say no, not always being available. That has really helped.
So, what was your first job or career experience that made you feel like you were genuinely stepping into your purpose? And what was the one that made you question everything?
Oh, wow. Um, I'll say that the job I have right now really feels like this is purpose aligned for me. And I feel like this job is also a culmination of all of the past jobs, a lot of the past jobs that I've had, whether it's hospitality, dealing or being able to provide service to high net worth individuals in luxury spaces, sell to people, building trust, event planning, and then executing and being a self-starter. I feel like all my different jobs have kind of led me up towards this. I feel like the job that made me question everything was during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we were given, a lot of us, and I'm not going to say everyone because people are actually still trying to come out of the hole of the financial crisis that they experienced through COVID. I might be one of them too. I just might not be willing to say it openly, but um, there was a scarcity mindset of people aren't working, they're not paying mortgage. This was a major crisis during the pandemic, and during that time, I had gotten a job with. When I say job, I was in training, flight attendant training with American Airlines, and I was in the third week of the program. When we got furloughed, I was given the option to take unemployment. But even before that, I had the ability to take unemployment from my other employer as well because they had gone out of business. So because of pride and how I grew up, I did not take unemployment. I went out there and found another job. I wasn't sure what the future would look like. Taking the unemployment, would we be would be stay unemployed even if work was available in the future. So I went out there and I got a job. I was at a grocery store and I did not like it at all. And I did not have a good time at all. And that it really did make me question my life, because I was going through a training program for management there in order to provide for myself. And it really made me question, is this really what life is going to look like? It's not just that, but I'm setting myself up for taking what I think, I don't know, just taking whatever instead of being intentional. So after that job, I became very intentional and I said, I went to work here, and then I did what I needed to, and I got the job to work there or work here. And that's when I started to go from, okay, I'm not just in retail anymore. Now I'm in luxury retail. Now I'm in commission sales. And then from there, now I'm at this other luxury brand where I'm trying to expand what it means to be in my role and breaking some rules in order to provide a better experience to the client. And that role led me to where I am right now, which is a role where we're in workplace experience and culture support. So I support a number of ENGs, all of our ENGs really, just depends on the capacity, but I also support stewardship and how my office location, how we show up, how our market really shows up in a way in the communities that we reside in. So I feel really blessed to have this role. I get to be paid in a lot of ways, to volunteer and to get involved with the community, but also to be very, very focused on humans and what it means, all the different facets of what it means to be a professional human working and living in our little part of the country. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
So corporate America can be a complicated space for a Black man. What was your first real encounter with the culture of corporate environments, and what surprised you most, positively or negatively?
Okay. Well, so I work in tax audit and consulting, and the accounting side of it, but honestly, I would say all of it is pretty white male dominated, and most people will tell you that as well. So it's really, and the tagline for my company where I work is delivering the power of being understood. So it's supposed to mean that you bring your full authentic self to work in order to empower the client experience, who we are as first choice employees or advisors to our clients for the market that we serve. And through the power of being understood resides this what it means, the tagline, I believe, is basically you bring your full identity. So whether that's gay, Black, brown, Asian, whatever faith you might have, being a woman working in this professional field, multicultural. I'm trying to hit all of our different ENGs in my head, all of our different employee network groups in my head, but basically that you're able to bring all of that to make it a amazing place to work, and also to create an amazing place for our clients, for our clients to work with. So I think that my job does a good job of doing that. They will tell you that there's still work to be done. That's why we have our employee network groups. It's not an easy thing being your full self at work when work still has to get done, right? Our workplaces, our professional workplaces, they're not a place for activism. They're a place to blend stewardship and culture into the 9-to-5 workday if you're in corporate, right? If you're a small business, that changes. But this is a big corporate engine, and it takes a lot of energy to move the ship in the direction. And I think it's about being intentional about the projects, about the in particular, we have a African American Center of Excellence, which is our ACE employee network group, which is for Black and Brown folks. And that basically is a place for us to not just communicate, but to share in Black history, to also teach people what it might mean to look to be an ally to Black and African Americans within our organization, but also in our community. So I feel like this job, because of how close I work with culture, has really opened up how I do that more intentionally, and how I can be a part of that towards the success of the business and the people that help the business.
So, were there moments in your career where you felt invisible, underestimated, or forced to code switch in ways that were costly to your sense of self? If so, how did you navigate those moments?
This is actually a really great question, because I feel like I feel like you, Charles, or even myself, because I'm starting my own podcast too. There's a whole, I'm actually really, really, really curious about other Black people, Black and Brown people that are working well, in areas where they're serving high net worth individuals, where the population might be predominantly white, Caucasian, and what all of that means. There's a lot of, it's very interesting. There's wealth everywhere, right? There's wealth across Asian Americans, all of our Black and Brown folks. I'm not going to go into all the different shades of Black and where they come from in the world, but there's a lot of wealth in all those areas, but we know that it predominantly resides within, white, affluent Americans. So what does it mean to have a job where you are in service to that population of people? What are all the intricacies? So, I mean, I've been at jobs formally, right? I'll say like Yves Saint Laurent, RH, where a larger part of the client book is white, right? We definitely have people of all colors and all backgrounds that are our clients. But when we look at who's predominantly walking in and purchasing with us, they're predominantly white. So I feel like, yeah, I learned to code switch, right? I am also that Black person that's been told multiple times, especially in my youth, that I talk white. So it's very, very interesting. I think it's a larger question. And I would love to actually find other Black people, Black and Brown people that work in those, like, think about the people that are Black and Brown that sell expensive cars. I'm not talking about Audis. I'm talking about the next level, right? Like that they're in Ferrari or they're selling Lamborghinis. People that are at RH and maybe they're in management. Imagine look at Pharrell Williams, right? Love him or hate him at LVMH, right? What does it mean for him to be a Black man, a Black executive at a company like LVMH, right? I think it's super interesting. I don't have the statistics on the breakdown of, okay, well, this many people are Black here versus this industry versus the jewelry industry and what their customer base looks like. But I feel like that's a great panel discussion to bring in those Black executives or those Black top salespeople at like Chanel or Prada and ask them, what is it like? Because I can tell you it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I'll say that much.
So I have a question here that's in the chat from Solomon. Let me put it on the screen for you. He says, in a corporate environment, what are the major challenges you face on a daily basis? And to some point, have you ever regretted finding yourself in a corporate environment?
So, yeah, I mean, in a corporate environment, what are the major challenges that I face? I think, I think a lot of, I mean, whether it's because I'm gay or Black, I think there is a question of, am I visible? Am I truly visible to my employer? Am I truly visible to my team? Right? And I think the way that that question is answered is in not just treatment, but in accessibility to programming, to the employee network groups. Um, I would say fair wages, all those different things help me and I hope other people to realize that, wow, okay, there is a space for me here. I'm not invisible. And in terms of my corporate experience in this role, you know, this is the power of being understood. Now, in former roles in selling with different companies, I would say that it wasn't always cut and dry, and that I didn't always maybe feel visible because that just wasn't the case. Are you asking for? Did he say situations you wanted to know about?
No.
In moments. Yeah, I mean, I would say every job is not perfect, and I think no job is perfect. But I think there's a difference between a job that's not perfect and a job that's not safe. And I think you need to find an employer, or hope you can find an employer where they're willing to have the hard conversations, they're willing to provide the programming, they're willing to provide the network groups, accessible, mental health services, all those different things that support you in all the complexities of what it means to bring yourself to work, right? That's you as a Black person, that's you and your socioeconomic background, you and your religion, all of that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Or at least the conversation.
Yeah. But I wanna add something else because I would love to get your reply back to this because it was what I think is really interesting is how you're trying to make sure that you spread yourself to do the wonderful positive things that you're doing. I want to first start. I want to say like for this platform and what this platform itself was created for is that when people see the title America in Black and White, I think that for those that don't know how to critically think, they see that title, they see a Black man, and they say, "Oh, this is all about, just you have to be Black," which is not true. You see, the experience itself is the experience. Now, the targeted area of underserved and marginalized communities is where I like to put myself and keep this space because, it's building inside to build out. So my focal points may be more so on our communities and our culture, and to display our legacy and amplify our voices is something that's misconstrued by those that see the title. And so again, I think they have to understand and critically think what that means. And so like what you're creating, I'm sure is pretty much that same focal point. So I just think that once you put in that mission and you get the full understanding as to what you want your media outlet to be about, I think you'll start to see that point from a much larger visual perspective. Because when we think about corporations, when we think about segments of people, there are big segments and there are big parts of these that actually
Sorry, it's getting very bright.
They actually have the opportunity, where there are some people that as they get into those segments, there are a lot of people that's in those segments that don't know nothing but. And when I say nothing but, that could be either that culture, that generation, whatever that may be. But you see, being multidimensional, being multifaceted, but being
Yeah.
but being able to speak to the things that matter most and what the target is sometimes how people can see that they get that tunnel vision. And so that's up to them to understand. But if they ask the question, they get the better answer. And so I think that's kind of like when we get to see what you're building, because I'm sure that it's going to be a very multifaceted organization. It's going to be a very much so multifaceted, media outlet. And I'm sure that that's something that many people are going to want to see because you've got the experience to put into that and build it out.
Well, thank you, Charles. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, so
And thank you, Solomon, for that question.
and so let's move over and talk about your work in DEI and the impact.
Mhm.
So let us level set for our audience. When you talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does that actually mean in practice beyond the buzzwords that so many organizations throw around?
I think this is interesting because in the market that I'm in, there's a push for stewardship, or I would say maybe DEI. I think a lot of it feels like it's optional. Now, it's not having it, it's the events and the time away from work in order to um, commit to it. So we have a national DEI focus, right? We call it our culture of inclusion, our inclusion team. And then we also have local focuses as well. There's some regional stuff in there as well, but it's mostly the market and the national level. So at the market level, we really have the ability to see, well, if you look at market leadership, what does market leadership want to see in terms of culture, right? And can there be a business alignment? And I think something that I'm trying to work on right now is how do we not become a business resource group where culture is totally aligned to the business and to BD, the business development, but how can we get leadership buy-in just a little bit more so that we can close our laptops and really dig into what it looks like to be a part of these different cultural experiences through our employee network groups? Because at where I am right now, it's not just a tagline, the power of being understood, right? I feel like the power of being understood would be a tagline only if we didn't have employee network groups. But we truly do have these strong employee network groups that really do create foundations for us to have inclusive spaces for all the different types of backgrounds of our workforce. So it it's there's a lip service, I believe, in other corporations. I'm not going to name any names because there's just so many of them that struggle with that idea of, okay, we want you to come to work and be yourself, but then we don't provide the programming or the accessibility for services for mentorship, learning, professional development that encompasses all these different layers of what it means to be a human professionally working in a 9 to 5 in a corporation. And I think we do a pretty good job of that here at RSM. But also, that's something that I also support intentionally here in my local office and in this market.
So look, let me pop this off about DEI because I want to get this response from you because I think that for the work that you're doing in the impact, I think people really need to understand where this works with you. And
Okay.
I'm gonna run down this street to the left. Okay, I'm gonna run over here to the LGBTQ community and talk about DEI because from the large perspective. So I'm gonna take it from the macro level to where it's been brought into a whole new culture that this does not matter. And so those that are intersectionalized that we don't think are main cultured, we need to get rid of that. And so when a lot of companies followed that same pattern and they decided that they did not want to continue to support inclusion because that meant that Big Brother's not going to see you as marketable, see you as a place that was right, because it has to be just like this. It has to be narrow. Now, the place where you're at and the great work that you're doing in this program, tell us, how are you making this work when it comes to not just your company, but to the various communities, such as the LGBTQ communities, where the inclusion part of your job is showing serious, serious impact?
Wow, it's a very big question, but it's also, I'm really happy because I have an answer off the top of my head. And it's because I work at, I'm not just going to say a great company because it's a great company, but I work at a company where, we realize that what's it called? The loophole with a lot of what was happening with Big Brother. And obviously, we are a part of government contracting, and I'm in no way speaking on behalf of my company in particular. You're just having to interview me and we're talking about work here and how I've been involved. But, as long as those spaces are inclusive, we are able to do things like have different events, right? We're at a time right now in America, but also just maybe just in our little pockets where it's really important to build allyship, right? How are the people that might not identify as what we identify as, how do we educate them on being allies, and how do we open up dialogue so that allyship is actually approachable, so that it doesn't feel like it's an if then, it's you're with us on this learning process of what it means to be a part of this subset of culture in this allied way, as a friend, as a collaborator, right? I think by focusing on allyship within our employee network groups, but in inclusion as a whole, it's allowed us to sustain support, even when it has been difficult. It has been very difficult, but it's allowed us to sustain support.
Wow. Well, and I gotta say, where you're at a place where you're able to do those things, I mean, kudos and shout outs to RSM, because that's a big plus, I think, for a lot of people to understand that there are some places that refuse to fall. They refuse to kiss the ring and say, this is the only way I survive. I don't see that. I'm really happy that you're at such a place, and they should be very happy to have an employee like you.
Well, thank you. And yeah,
Your approach to DEI is described as rooted in data, storytelling, and authentic accountability. Walk us through the methodology and how does those three things work together?
let me say, because yes. So my methodology is the firm's methodology. I just, I think everyone has their own flavor, right? The firm RSM has said these things need to be covered. And then you kind of stretch where there might be leeway here or there, right? As long as it's within budget and it doesn't break compliance, then mostly we're all good. So I just like to challenge some of the status quo. And I also like to bring energy to things. I think, and this isn't this isn't activism or stewardship in particular, but I think everything requiring people to get involved, to believe in a mission statement requires energy. And I think a lot of us think that energy needs to be money. You know, how much money do we have? What's the budget like, right? What's the energetic budget? Who do we need at the front of the room to lead the meeting or to lead the event so that it feels intentional, right? So something I'm playing around with, right, is the fact that we do have low engagement in some of our events and things, but I build that up with, as long as the energy and is there and we've been intentional, then I think there's been something powerful that's happened, right? We didn't just have 20 people that came together for a PowerPoint presentation, right? We had people come together and really get to the heart of something while also being inclusion and also celebrating allyship. So it's finding those ways. I feel like for me right now is building that energy, sustaining that energy. But that also means that as a leader, so if I'm leading something or if I'm co-leading something or if I'm on a committee, it's making sure that I'm also contributing to a positive place to work where people can give me feedback and talk about, Wes, I think this is how things should be better. So they need to have a voice too. This isn't just me and my ideas about energy in the space, right? If energy isn't working and we actually do need to spend some money, we need to ask for dollars, then I need to be able to be open to that too. So I feel like that's what I'm playing with right now, is this idea of energy, because it is about human to human contact, right? Charles, you and I have been talking for the past few weeks about this happening, but it happened because you reached out to me on LinkedIn. That's a human to human experience. That wasn't a robot. You didn't have a chat bot reach out to me. So I felt like that was something that was necessary. And I feel like it is this human to human contact is what we will continue to experience, whether it's virtual or in person. And that's what ultimately matters. Yeah.
So, what are some of the most measurable results you have seen from DEI programs you have designed or led? And what does success actually look like in numbers and in human terms?
I think probably the biggest thing that I've been involved in right now would be our Power of Love. So it's our season of giving here at RSM, where for my gosh, I want to say 3-4 months out of the year, we focus in our individual offices, our markets, on giving back to the community. And I was a part of this program for the first time last year. And, I think our numbers, we did struggle. We struggled with making an impact with our programming, with what was available in terms of volunteer events and also fundraising events. And it wasn't because no one did anything wrong. It's that there wasn't enough people at the table to collaborate on that idea, right? So energy, right? That's energy. We need more hands in the pot. We need more people owning certain projects. So if we're looking at that, I think we raised something like $17,000 or something like that as an office of around 400 people, right? And last year, we were able to raise 46,000. So definitely a major increase. And that wasn't just me. It's because, once again, we had more people at the table, more people that said, I care. We can focus energy in X and X areas because we have a vision and we have a plan and we have some direction here on where to go, right? If we're going to support one organization, it's going to be a small, hyper local organization where people actually can build compassion and empathy for the goal, right? For that mission statement of that hyper local community, volunteer organization or nonprofit. And that is second story. So Second Story here, and I know you're in Atlanta, Charles, but Second Story is here in Fairfax County, Virginia, and they do help with homeless youth in crisis housing, young mothers that might have children that might need emergency housing, and giving them places to live with programming behind it so that they can save up money and get their education. And though that I think resonated with our office folks, and they gave and they supported and they volunteered and they showed up, and what came of it was $46,000. So we're hoping to increase that this year. We're actually in the middle of that season right now, that Power of Love season, and I'm super excited to be part of it again. And that it's going off really, really well right now.
So as we as we talk about this as well, I want you to do me this one solid, and that is, I want you to tell us, what is the importance? Why is DEI so important? But also in the inclusion space and doing all of this work that you're doing, how does it motivate you to continue to do that work?
Well, I think that DEI inclusion is important for the reasons why Solomon's question was it was right on the nose of when DEI inclusion is missing in companies. You're at a loss of feeling like, are you visible? Do you regret coming to work? Do you feel seen? Do you feel heard? Do you feel supported? And is work an accessible place for you? So I feel like that's why it's important, right? We want the opposite of all of those. We want to be able to say that, yes, work is accessible for me. Yes, I feel seen and heard at work. And yes, I can develop into the professional person I want to be, but also personally develop at work openly, right? So I feel like that's why DEI is important. And I feel like what keeps me going, was that the second part of the question?
What motivates you to keep doing this work?
What keeps motivating me is because I know that I came to this job because of the culture, and I need to make sure that I'm doing the work to sustain that culture. I can't for me, I'm someone who, once again, I grew up, right, tending to a garden, learning that was very powerful. And by tending to the garden that is our company's culture, I am a part of the solution. I'm a part of the conversation. If there is a problem, if there is a hiccup in regards to inclusion, DEI, or stewardship, and how it aligns to business development, I can be there to lend my voice, to lend my perspective, so that I'm a part of the solution, and so that things can continue and that things don't stop. So yeah, I would say that my reason for continuing is so that I know that I've done my part for culture in the workplace.
So we, when we chatted, before the show, and I told you we do Black History 365, and I asked you, who were the most influential people in your life and career? You told me it was your mother, Oprah Winfrey, and Ty Beasley. Can you tell us, your mother was your first Black history teacher. As an adult, how do you understand the profound intentionality of that gift she gave you? And what specific lessons or figures did she bring to life for you most vividly?
Well, all these big questions, Charles. So, well, and let me just break that down, because, my mom is a big factor in my life. Good or bad, rocky here and there. She is someone who helped to shape me into who I am today. Oprah Winfrey, for whatever people believe about her, right? All of the drama that's come out about who she is, maybe as a person and maybe as a businesswoman too. The fact of the matter is that when you think about a successful Black person um, who's on the map and who has made it through being a person in the media, you know, Oprah is a big person that we think about. Um, she's one of the most wealthiest Black women in the world. And to think that, you know, she started out the way that she did, and the way that my mom had humble beginnings, it feels like, you know, if you can believe in yourself and not just believe in yourself, but also break down barriers and honestly be aggressive when it comes to going towards your goals, I think that it does something. Now, the third person on that list is someone that I haven't seen or heard from a lot of in our company, but he's in our company and he's very high up in our company. He's essentially the people person. He's essentially, you know, um, he's our people leader in some ways. And so that's Ty Beasley. And he's a Black man. And, you know, he's a great leader and he leads us in a lot of what it means to be a part of RSM. So I do look up to him and our firm as well. My mother did a great job of teaching me through music, right? We talked about food and music, what it means to be Black, you know? And so when I think about Janet Jackson in particular, when I think about Toni Braxton, when I think about how music was a way for healing to happen at small scale within my family, right? I talked about the fact that my family, you know, extended family, immediate family, we don't always have all the language to talk about what we're feeling or to say what's on our minds or to talk about trauma, whether that be ancestral or whether it be, you know, very real, right, in our current generation. But we have music that links us together, and we have music that is rooted in Black culture, Black popular culture for sure, right? I don't think I'm talking about, you know, some of the like, I don't know a lot of like the really deep Black, you know, music, but I was taught on the popular Black music. That's what we listened to a lot in the house. I think part of that might have been too just because of how my parents grew up and what they were exposed to, which makes a lot of sense with where they grew up, right? But either way, music was healing for us, and I think Black pop culture music was really healing for us as a family to be able to laugh and dance. And the fact that I can, you know, when I'm driving down the street and I want to throw the windows down and put on a Janet Jackson, you know, track, you know, it's all for you. And I, you know, it's my mom speeding down the street in the Black Explorer when we were going to Home Depot or Lowe's to go pick up plants or something. There's good, wholesome memories there that help to protect the fact that my upbringing was multifaceted, right? To bring that word back. It wasn't all doom and gloom. It wasn't all amazing rainbows, but it's anchored in some great moments with Black pop culture music. So
Oprah Winfrey has been described as a major influence on your vision for using a platform for transformation. What specifically about Oprah Winfrey's model that spoke to you, and how have you translated that inspiration into your own leadership style?
So I am very interested in people. I'm people motivated. So I love to get to know people and talk to people. In the role that I'm in, we support the entire office and sometimes the whole market when it comes to events, catering, putting on meetings and other things. So, but we're also central. So we might experience people that are serving internally or serving external clients, people that are in all lines of business and service lines. And we get to see a lot of different people, but I'm also curious about those people, right? And I want to ask questions about what their experience is like to work where they work and to be on their teams. How are they dealing with the return to office, you know, experience? How are they? What's the experience been like in their generation while they've been at work? What do they want to see in terms of programming? What drives them in their job, in their lives, right? That's something that I really appreciate. But here's the thing that I think really connects me to Oprah is because she does that through conversation. So she does that through listening. Sometimes her questions might be probing. Sometimes her questions might be controversial. So I don't think I go in that category when it comes to work. I really do like to leave. I like to leave space, dead air, so to speak, for people to fill it in how they feel best to do that. I think you've done a great job of that today with me, just kind of letting me ramble about certain things. But I think there's power in open conversation and conversation where there is not um, there's no judgment and where it's just please tell me what's going on and I'm going to leave you the room to be yourself and give you the room and the space to speak authentically and speak openly. And I think that's where healing happens. I think that's where true bonds can happen between people. And I think that's where we come together more as human beings, not just professionals, not just Black people, but also like all people, by learning about our individual histories, our individual stories, our narratives.
So tell us about Ty Beasley. Who is he to you? What did his model of community investment and youth development show you? And how has his mentorship shaped the man you are today?
I think the powerful thing about Ty Beasley is because he's so I know a lot of us have role models that we don't really talk with at all, but they've been a role model for us. You know, maybe it's um, Bayard Rustin, or maybe it's just another someone in Black history. I'm on the spot here, so I feel like Ty is someone who he works super high up in our company and he's a person of color and he's someone to look up to as like, oh, okay, wow, like we actually can exist these um, in these spaces, in these C-suite spaces, right? I think that's something powerful. So because of what Thai represents in terms of supporting culture and inclusion, right? Supporting the people here within RSM in a certain way. Um, he has been a role model by just existing, right? The same way that someone could look up to someone else that might be more public facing, that they might never have had a conversation with them, but by reading their biography and reading what they've how they've gotten to a place of influence, how it positively affects that person's outlook on where they are in their lives and what they're capable of. So Ty has done that for me. I'm sure other people as well within the firm, to show them what's possible. So yes.
So, final question for you. Beyond Oprah and Ty Beasley, who are the historical or contemporary Black figures in any field whose lives and work you return to again and again as a source of direction and inspiration?
So we recently did a Pride virtual hangout to celebrate Pride Month here in our office, our market. And I had to do some research on some historical figures in the DMV. So that's, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and everyone knows what DMV means. I'm not talking about getting your driver's license. Um, but the DMV area has a lot of history here. And I was actually able to find out about one of the oldest drag queens ever, named William Swan. So William Queenie Swan was someone who back in the late 1800s, like 1883, was like one of the first documented Black
Right.
gay male drag queens. And they were I mean, you're talking about a time when there were lynchings and they didn't have any rights. I mean, they were just freed slaves at that point. They were just starting to free slaves, and Queenie was free, living. I mean, he was working as a tailor with kind of like his, I guess it was like his family's trade in D.C., but Maryland born. And, at night, so maybe by day, dressed up in men's tailored clothing, but at night, dressed to the nines and all the finery and all the things, questioning and being in opposition to what it means to be a Black man in America at that time, when you weren't even, to be a Black man was nothing, right? You didn't own anything for the most part, right? You didn't have anything to your name, but yet I'm going to also go ahead and put into question what it means to be a man in general, right? It's just this artistic person bringing together different people that are also Black, or also they had allies as well. And they were constantly broken up. Their parties and their events were constantly broken up, and all these other things, and the fact that he had the audacity to be himself and to dress up in drag confidently during that time is astounding to me, and makes me want to figure out how I can be more myself, be more authentic. What am I calling it right now? I'm saying to be even more bold, to be bold right now during this time. So Queenie Swan is a reminder right now for me as a black man that plays around with femininity and plays around with sexuality and gender, to really be yourself no matter where you are, no matter who might be in power.
I want you to check out my blog, because I did a blog post on her a while ago.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
I did, and I will tell you, what they call the duck walk now, they called it the cake walk.
Oh, wow.
And when they did the little shows like they do today, they would win a cake.
Oh, wow.
They would win.
Interesting.
They would win a cake. But as you were talking about the parties being broken up, they could break up as many parties as they want to. She still had her parties.
Yes.
She still had her parties because she was going to be who she was. So to you, as you're saying, you're trying to figure out how to be more bold, be more of a bold person. In these times, the leadership is in your hands.
Yeah.
So you don't have to ask for permission. You just do.
Yes.
That's how you do that.
Well, thank you, Charles, and thank you to Queenie Swan. How amazing! How amazing that you have a blog post. It's on your Substack.
No. It's on my blog, Changing Trends and Times.
Okay.
Actually, after we close the show, I want you to stick around for a little bit so I can talk to you about a few things.
Awesome. Will do.
Do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience? How they can follow you, come to your website, any of those good things you'd like for them to know?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually focused on leading with wonder. So whether that's leading with curiosity, but I call it wonder because wonder is actually what comes before curiosity. So you can find me on Substack, on Instagram at Wonder with West. And I'm just starting up those spaces to really start thinking about having my own podcast where the basis is wonder-filled conversation. So it's Wonderful Conversations podcast. And I'm super excited. Just like Charles said, this is about multifaceted critical thinking, but just understanding that the stories, every single person's story, right? I'm sure it'd be very different if I was interviewing Charles right now, the things that would come from Charles because of Charles's experience, but also the fact that I believe that the only way that Charles has been able to create, one of the different ways, is through this curiosity of all these different people's stories. So that is what I focus on the podcast. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on through Wonder with West. So come and join me if you'd like. And it's free to subscribe. And I'd be happy to see you guys there to start having conversations. So thanks.
So in closing, I want to thank you for this time, and we definitely have to have you back because there's lots and lots of information that we didn't get the opportunity to chat about.
Very well.
And I would like to thank everyone for watching the show. Those who have participated that have been here throughout the entire show. I appreciate you, and it's your support that continuously to build this platform is the thing that makes us so happy.
Yeah.
So in closing, I have this closing monologue I like to close with. Wes Ferguson, thank you, not just for the time you gave us tonight, but for the honesty, for the willingness to be seen, for refusing to give us the polished, press-ready version of yourself when we ask for the real one. What you gave this audience tonight is the kind of gift that does not expire. I want to pull out just a few of the threads from the conversation that I know stayed with me and I believe stayed with you too. First, the way Wes talks about DEI. He says something that I keep turning over in my mind. He said that real inclusion is not felt in a policy document. It is felt in a daily experience of someone who used to feel invisible, now being seen. This is not corporate language. This is pastoral language. That is the language of someone who understands that the point of all the programs and frameworks and scorecards is not to satisfy a board. It is to change a human life. I want every executive, every HR professional, every leader in this space to sit with that for a while. Second, his commitment to community. Wes made it clear tonight that success without stewardship is just selfish with a better wardrobe. He is a man who has walked into rooms that many of us are still trying to get access to, and his first thought every single time is, who can I bring with me? That is the model, that is the standard, and if you're listening tonight and you have been climbing without reaching back, let this be the invitation to change that. And third, his mother who sat him down and told him that Black history was not somebody else's story, it was his. I think about how many of us carry the investments of a mother, a grandmother, an auntie, a teacher who poured into us when the world was pouring out. Tonight is your reminder to honor that investment, not just by remembering it, but by activating it. Use that they gave you, build something worthy of the sacrifice they made. American Black and White family, I want to ask you something. I want to ask something of you tonight. If this conversation moved you, do not let it stop at your screen. Share it, start a conversation in your household, send it to young persons who needs to hear that their story has value. That is how we build. That is how we grow. Subscribe to this channel, follow us on every platform, and bring someone with you the next time you tune in. This is what America in Black and White is for. This is why we do this, because the conversations we have here, the real ones, the honest ones, the ones that both challenge and affirm those conversations, are how we move forward together. Stay in the truth, stay in the light. This is America in Black and White. Join us tomorrow for another great episode where we will have the owners of Pop Stars Popcorn here to talk about how they maneuvered through the COVID situation and have made a polished business, and they're Black owned. We'll see you guys tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You all have a great